NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg, he's saying that Ukraine can attack Russia outside the special military operations zone. In your opinion, when he's talking about outside this zone, he's talking about Crimea or he's talking about Russia?
No, he's talking about Russia proper. So, and yeah, as it doesn't require any additional elaborations anymore. The more they kill Russians, the better for them. It's simple as that. So it's not Crimea; it's everywhere in Russia.
Then they're giving a green light to Ukrainians to attack Russia. What would be the reaction on the part of Russia if they do that, in your opinion?
Oh no, they already did. They already attacked the border cities of Belgorod and Kursk. So it's nothing new. It has been going on for a while now. So I mean, the best reaction is just to create the cordon sanitaire, sanitary cordon, so to speak, and make sure that the ranges of whatever is left in Ukrainian arsenal for now doesn't reach the territory of both Russia proper and newly acquired republic, their territories. So the best way, of course, and this is what is being implemented, is to defeat the whole regime, basically wipe out what's left of the Ukrainian military, and this is being done. It is in the progress, so to speak.
When it comes to this type of rhetorics that we can attack Russia, do you think, is there any strategy behind this, or these kind of rhetorics are coming out of desperation because there is no result on the battlefield for NATO or Ukrainians?
Yeah, it's desperation primarily, and they cannot develop strategy in a sense as we understand strategy, which is the serious overall plan of achieving some kind of objectives, be them political, geopolitical, or military. Of course, there are two different strategies. One is military, which is subordinate to the larger national strategy. So they cannot do that. They do not have the required toolkit, none of them. And so they don't even have history of successfully implementing any kind of strategy. So yeah, it is desperation, and it's primarily what they all are capable of doing. That's the only thing. It's PR. It's for their internal, primarily internal consumption, but also, yeah, just to, huff and puff, stomp one's chest and things of this nature.
When Jens Stoltenberg is talking this way, we know that the simple title of his position would be the Speaker of NATO. And who's behind the scene, in your opinion? Who's sending these type of talks to be said by Stoltenberg?
Well, Stoltenberg is a puppet, or muppet, if you wish. I mean, he is a former prime minister of Norway. He is the guy with economic education, basically, background. And we know what economic education, quote unquote, means from Western universities. He doesn't, he is barely, he's merely a political figure. He is the chairman of, so to speak, Secretary General of NATO. But he is obviously totally not independent. He's totally dependent on the decisions which are made by the United States. But nowadays, you have to keep in mind that Europeans, I mean, all Europeans, obviously, France, Germany, Spain, Italy, they're panicking because obviously they always have been freeloaders. They invented this Soviet, threat, and they've been living supposedly by the United States, defending them for whatever it's worth. This is a ridiculous idea which have been exposed, but that's what drives them. And one of the factors, to my very limited understanding, I am not former diplomat. I am not involved with in any way with the political top, if you wish, in Europe. But I think so. They are panicking also because the United States inevitably have to abandon them. And those people, they really, due to their being very illiterate and badly educated, they really think that Russia may indeed attack. And that's also one of the factors which kind of forces them to make that kind of the statements. And Stoltenberg is the exhibit A of that kind of panic. You probably saw him recently, the way he was articulating his body language. It was the body language of complete, the person who was, I mean, he was scared, I mean, absolutely, so in a complete panic mode. And yeah, we saw it visually.
If you remember Zelensky in his last interview with CNN, when he was asked if Ukraine has a plan B, a backup plan, he said, no, we don't have a plan B. We're going to fight Russians to the last Ukrainian. This was the abstract of what he said during that interview. Right now, we know that US troops are in Moldova. There is an article in Asia Times. They're talking about there may be a plan B, the US troops going to Odessa and attacking Crimea. Do you think when it comes to such ideas that US troops getting involved in this conflict, it's not imaginary?
Oh, it's primarily wishful thinking, especially since United States actually, throughout all political top of the United States, starting from Biden and down to Blinken and others, even Sullivan, who's just swear that there will be no ground troops, which indeed what's going to happen. Yeah, so they move on Odessa, they get killed in industrial quantities because they don't have any kind of the sustainability capability there. They will be wiped out, generally speaking. So, and what are you going to do after that? So they understand that. There are, I mean, numerous reports now, obviously, about a very significant number of the American so-called mercenaries. Some of those are indeed mercenaries. They do it for money. Others are undercover, so to speak, cadre officers of the U.S. Army. But it gives them the plausible deniability. Say, hey, you know what? These are our people, but we, as the U.S. government, we have nothing to do with that. Of course, it has everything to do with that, but at least on the, using the Frank Herbert's, quote from June, the forms must be obeyed, and the forms are being obeyed in this respect. So, and it doesn't matter what they send. Yeah, you have to. We have to keep in mind that what is, I constantly speak about it and write about it nonstop. Correlation of forces and means are radically not in favor of NATO, whatever they do. So they know that people who are in NATO, at least some level there, they understand that if they move in, they will be annihilated. What are they going to do after that? Do they want to die in the nuclear war? Because it is the United States, which is actually a nuclear biased nation. So what can I say? Mostly it's noise, so to speak, the background noise. And some opinions of some people who think about it, but they are not in charge and they cannot issue the order for any kind of the military formations to deploy somewhere in Ukraine. So that's pretty much it, I think.
When you see Germany sending troops to Lithuania, do you think it's a political act or they have some sort of military agenda behind this?
Well, it's, again, as I said, it's demonstration that Germany matters. And what do they send there? What, 3,000 like brigade, which cannot be deployed there properly, let alone stationed on the permanent basis. Yeah, just to show, that, yeah, we Germans, we matter, and NATO close to Russian borders. And yeah, sure, yeah. It's, as I already stated, yeah, realistically speaking, if NATO wants to go to war with Russia, in Ukraine, and achieve some kind of the stalemate, if you wish, they will require at least 1 million troops, give and take, with all which involves there. And again, there's the problem. NATO is stuck technologically in 1990s, early 2000s. The air warfare doctrine of NATO is obsolete. It has never been developed with the serious air defense and serious opposition air forces in mind. So other than that, so what are you going to do? 50,000, 100,000 make no difference. It's just a matter of months or two before they will be wiped out.
Andrei, when it comes to the confrontation, direct confrontation of NATO and Russia, we have to remember that most of the wars in the aftermath of the World War II fought by the United States, they were fighting these nations that simply didn't have any type of army. And most of the NATO countries were not participating in these attacks, in these wars. When it comes to this experience coming from the wars, simply in the aftermath of the World War II, how do you see these NATO countries? How capable are they? This war that we are witnessing right now in Ukraine is nothing like the war in Iraq, in Afghanistan. How can you explain for those people who are still insisting that NATO is big, NATO can do a lot of things, a lot of damage to Russia, or even defeat Russia?
It's useless to explain anything to them, because for the most part, these are people with already established view. It is extremely rigid. It is also extremely incompetent and extremely badly informed. And America's military record is a record of losses, non-stop losses. From, well, we may say that it was a draw, whatever you call it, in Korea, obviously a catastrophic loss in Vietnam. Then we have this, beating the 5-year-old kid in the sandbox called Iraqi army, backward, badly trained, and badly equipped. And after that, again, we have what? Iraq, lost war. Afghanistan, humiliating, basically not just retreat, run away from Afghanistan. So when you look at this, well, yeah, United States defeated Grenada. That's about it. United States has no record after Korea of any combined arms warfare of scale. None, zilch. Plus, you have to keep in mind that also they have been drawing those lessons from conflicts, which have to be actually put in the proper perspectives. For example, they were following, obviously, everybody was, the Israeli forces, wars of 1967 in 1973. But yeah, it's important. You have to draw some lessons from those. But again, they were fighting an extremely backward, badly trained Arab armies. And well, just to give you an example, at that time, by the 1967 and 73, most of those armies were illiterate conscripts. Okay, so you had all kinds of the impediments, and for some reason they decided that, oh yeah, we will always have this. No, you're not. And here they are. They talked themselves up so much that as their foreword to General Patton's memoir, Mr. David Atkinson wrote that he was talking about the arrogance, creeping arrogance of General Patton, who evidently never faced a real enemy, which, for example, was on the Eastern Front. And he wrote about this creeping arrogance, which would cost United States in Vietnam dearly. And it was written in 80s. The book and the memoir was published, and it was actually the foreword by David Atkinson was there. But you know what? Nothing changed since then. They really think that they're that great. They are not. But you know what? It's difficult to explain for the person who graduates U.S. Army War College, that what they faced all their life was primarily expeditionary warfare. It wasn't. It was a war, but it was different war, and especially against the opposition, which have been always backward, very feeble most of the time. But even in Vietnam, obviously, granted that there was a support from Soviet Union and China to a degree, so that the result. So it's how to put it politely. Evidently, they have problems with their learning mechanisms. Okay. And those problems are primarily because of the confabulated military history. They lose wars and then they come up and say we're the greatest force. Wow, so It's like Cuba Gooding Jr. in the movie. I don't remember what's the name of the movie. Show me the money, show me the record, okay? Show me where you achieved something, which is strategic objective. And again, Afghanistan, now with Ukraine, they cannot lose, as they convince themselves, because they understand it is historic loss. But then again, listen, you have to keep in mind they got in the war with the country which defeated Nazism, and she defeated the best Nazi Europe. I mean, there was not just Germany, Wehrmacht. There were Romanians, there were Hungarians, Italians, Finns, and all that, and they defeated it. The Red Army ended up in Berlin, and these people still think that they defeated Hitler. So. Well, Red Army was the one which annihilated 80% of the creme de la creme of Wehrmacht on the Eastern Front. But go tell them it's impossible to break through them,
When it comes to this conflict, this war in Ukraine, many people think that it was Ukrainian behind the scene who was running the show. But we know that NATO was behind the scenes since this conflict started. And this is the NATO ideology. This is the NATO strategy that it has been defeated in Ukraine. It's not Ukrainian one.
No, it's NATO. I mean, Ukraine is done. Ukraine actually right now is in the convulsions. It's gonna cease to exist as it's already ceased actually as the functional state. But I mean, primarily so-called war gaming and operational planning, primarily done in Ramstein, by this contact group of all those NATO people who never fought a real war in their life. They never won anything. They have an extremely low level of the academics, military academics. So these guys decided that they can outplay Russian general staff. I'm sorry to say that they're amateurs compared to those people. And that's the result. And yes, it is about that. That's why they are so desperate right now, because it is the defeat for NATO. The Ukraine is kind of right now is just secondary stuff. It's just merely the battlefield where we are finishing right now at this stage. It is the fifth iteration of the armed forces of Ukraine and all those volunteers, quote unquote. And what can I say? I mean, they want to continue to do this. Russians will gladly oblige to annihilate as much as will be thrown at them, because Russia sits pretty and comfortable and actually advancing. Yesterday, 5 kilometers again, broke through it. I cannot keep all names of those villages and towns. So yeah, what did they expect?
When we look at Putin's attitude, Putin's strategy during this conflict, many people were criticizing him for being so cautious with this new activities in Moldova, in Lithuania, these small states. We totally understand what was the reason behind the Putin's strategy. He wanted to have everything under his control.
Well, that's the issue. NATO cannot confront Russia directly because they don't have the resources to do that. No, as I already stated, they may gather like, I don't know, 50,000 people, some 100, 200 tanks, and maybe several hundred of the combat aircraft. They're not going to survive the real battlefield. First, they are not designed to fight a real war to start with. And the second thing is that in the end, everybody in Russia understands that basically in Washington, you have people many of them are insane, downright crazy, and they are militarily incompetent. Well, that is why we have the situation which we have today, precisely because of their incompetence and inability to see the picture. They don't have background to do that. And while you understand that on the other side you have this batshit crazy people, essentially, you have to tread cautiously too. But then again, if you look at one of the major objectives now, when it's we kind of now can see it clearly, and it is being practically openly declared by Russian side. It is not about Ukraine only, it is about NATO. And again, we have to remember what was the so-called December 2021 ultimatum, or the letter issued. Well, it was obviously Kremlin, but conveyed through the Minister of the Foreign Affairs. There were very specific points there. Russia wants NATO, to the borders of 1997. And but now, hey, guess what? The game changed. Russia is interested now of destroying NATO completely, or making or seeing to it that it collapses and disintegrates, which is in the plans now. And again, we have to keep in mind what you see on the battle lines right now. And front is moving to the west. We know this is just even people who hate Russia, they have to report it. The main issue here is that nobody knows. Well, we know there are those 600,000 plus troops in the rear, and Russia gets roughly 30 plus thousand volunteers a month now. It's kind of came down a little bit. It was prior to this, it was about 40,000 a month. But the point is, they don't even need that many volunteers anymore, you know. And as a result, how many troops Russia has already to meet any contingency, apart from the fact that we have the cadre reestablishment, which is the Leningrad, military district, for example. And when you look at this, yeah, NATO simply doesn't have those forces. And in terms of economy, it's laughable. Again, Netherlands have the prostitution and drug trade, hard drugs, heroin, cocaine, and things of this nature as the part of their GDP. So I guess they have great economy if they count those types of the activities as their economic output. So can you take this seriously? No, of course not.
The other thing would be if NATO decides to confront Russia, we have to think of Russia's allies. We know that they have a lot at stake if something happens. How do you see this? Do you think that NATO, at the end of the day, do they really understand that Russia is not alone? We have Belarus, we have Iran, we have China. These countries are totally connected, they have a lot at stake if something happens between Russia and NATO.
Mr. Lavrov has been yesterday, I believe he left yesterday. He had been 2 days state visit. He met Mr. Wang Yi, and he was accepted by Mr. Z. Comrade Z saw Mr. Lavrov, and after that there was a statement which should send the shockwaves, which it did, to NATO, because they were talking not about traditional things, like our cooperation is growing. No. They were talking about specific security arrangements for BRICS and the Eurasian economic landmass, so to speak. And this is serious. What are those security arrangements? Not just political way. We're talking about some military security arrangements, because obviously United States knows it's lost. So the only reason for United States, a way of United States, which is really doesn't matter anymore, somehow to switch to, Taiwan issue and defeat, China, because they need to cover up, to wash out, wash away this humiliation which they are experiencing right now, that everybody now openly laughing at US Army, not to speak about NATO forces. I mean, it just, they parade themselves unbelievable. It's just like amateurs, absolutely. So, okay, let's get to China. Well, China is not alone. And that's why Mr. Lavrov was there. Vladimir Putin should be there in May, I believe. China probably going to acquire some Russian technologies which will make life of any kind of formations miserable. Not to speak, of course, about the fact that China itself, builds now it's, I believe, the largest surface fleet in the world, the surface navy. There are issues with the submarines, though, but yes, and I mean, they have an enormous wherewithal, and of course they are learning, looking at what is happening right now in Ukraine, and I'm pretty sure it's almost 100% that there are Chinese officers with the Russian armed forces who are learning too. And Russians open, the doors for those people, including an academy of general staff.
When you look at this group of Marine, they went to Taiwan. Do you think that United States is seeking some sort of direct conflict with China, or they're doing this just to intimidate China?
It's both, I guess. And again, the more they lose, which they already lost in Ukraine, the more they have pressure on themselves because they are not very smart people. And again, listen, this is the so-called strategy, what they were doing in terms of the so-called strategy. It's a kindergarten, really. It's like, oh yeah, we go defeat Russia, collapse it with the sanctions, just grab those resources, reorient, go to China, defeat China, and here we're hegemon again. The United States is bankrupt. Its military is not designed to fight real modern war. So, and the more this becomes evident to the rest of the world, or what is called global south now, the more they are becoming desperate and the more political pressure grows to somehow preserve this already completely destroyed image of, some military hegemon. And so they plan, to defeat China because they do not want China, to be America's competitor. You remember that Janet Yellen went there and they asked them not to outproduce United States. I mean, this is beyond belief. These are people who are children. They have the psychology of the teenagers. They do not understand what they are dealing with. And that is why, for example, they don't understand that industrially Chinese economy dwarfs that of the United States. And I mean dwarfs. United States is a midget compared to China economically. Yet, well, with the some exception of some industries like, for example, aerospace, and things of this nature, many people still cannot wrap their brains around that China produces more than 3 times a number of the automobiles. China produces 12 times more, 12 times, order of magnitude, more steel than the United States. The Chinese shipbuilding industry, United States doesn't even register compared to it, So, and when you look at those things, I mean, like, okay, sure. So Janet Yellen goes there and everybody goes there to Beijing and they ask them not to be successful, basically. Its absurdity is of the scale. And now they have the situation where they are militarily defeated in Ukraine. It's a desperate situation. And there are many nut jobs in there who still pretend that they mean that much. The only thing which United States has left is primarily the reserve status of the reserve currency of the US dollar. But that thing is also being addressed. And frankly, nobody wants the United States to collapse abruptly, okay? Because in the end, it is still global economy, although United States tries to make it a United States economy very unsuccessfully, expectedly. So, and when you look at this correlation indeed of the forces and economies, it's all laughable, and especially when you look at the dynamics of the industrialization of Germany and other European countries. I mean, it's unbelievable. I never saw anything like this in my life. And I lived through the collapse of the Soviet Union. Can you believe it? This is something on the whole other level.
Europe is suffering a lot from this conflict in Ukraine. And if something happens in China between China and the United States, that would be a suicide for Europe because they would have tremendous problems in Europe.
Yeah, Europe is. I am on the record. I stated not for once. Europe is done. The way, especially old Europe, it's over for it. It's gonna end up very poor. It doesn't mean that it will be completely like paupers, but they are already becoming much poorer, and they will be much more poor. And especially when we look at again at the dynamics of the deindustrialization, and especially driven by the suicidal cultural and economic policies. And how to put it politely, for Europe to survive somehow, they need the European Union to disintegrate, because all this, the whole idea behind this is complete garbage. It was all built in the favor of the bank capital of the old, European economies, and especially Germany, which was, German standard of living and economy was based for the last 50 plus years on two things. Germany being the by default called or designated the economic engine of Europe, and of course this was Russian energy, affordable energy. It's all gone. And fact is, United States also has issues actually with delivering on their promises with the energy, especially LNG deliveries. So, what's left for Europe? Yeah, they used to still have some, qualified cadres, so to speak. They still have some industries, like obviously we're talking about Airbus, we talk about Siemens in Germany, and some other places, including like Rolls-Royce, for example, and not cars, engines, jet engines by United Kingdom. But when you look attentively at what they are capable of, this is absolutely not what has been portrayed throughout, how to put it politely. Again, if you look at as main indices in terms of producing or production of energy, metals, for example, the other critical machinery, it is shrinking dramatically. Fact is, once the Tata Steel, which is owned, by the way, by India, Indian billionaire or whatever his name is going to be removed from United Kingdom, guess what? It will be the first G20 country which doesn't produce its own steel. There's no economy without steel, energy, aluminum, machines, all those things. But you have literally the whole generation of the imbeciles who have been pushed through all those degree mills like London School of Economics, Sorbonne, who believe that it's all about money. It is not. And you have the collapse of the banking capital on the monetary theories and suddenly, yeah. And as the result, when you are paying, just to give you an example, if you pay like 30 cents per kilowatt, hour of electricity, and then suddenly it becomes $1, more than three times. Believe me, things gonna change big time, and this is what is happening right now. Plus, United States now is interested in squeezing Europe. This is obviously not a strategy, it is just a reaction, almost knee-jerk reaction, because United States wants to live too, and for United States to live, at least to extend the agony of this economic system, they need to sacrifice Europe. United States is interested in destroying European Union, and then of course consuming all those countries one by one. But again, that's not going to work also because they already losing the market. It used to be very solvable market. People had money. It's changing dramatically now, and no more luxuries, no more the useless things, and no more the iPhone ideology, so to speak. So there you go.
In Switzerland, they're talking about having peace talks, and they're talking about that without Russia, we cannot do a substantial conference that makes some sense in terms of having a direct negotiations, a direct conversation between the two sides of this conflict. And it seems that the United States is not happy with this concept. When it comes to the Biden administration, many people would think what they want to do.
Nobody knows what they want to do, because the only thing they know, okay, again, if you look attentively across the board, from Mr. Austin, who is the Secretary of Defense, you look at Blinken, you look at Sullivan, you look at Kamala Harris, for crying out loud, and you look at those people, they are apparatchiks. The only thing they know in their life for their president and his cabinet to get elected, and it's all about election. Everything about election. They don't have morals, they don't have any ethics, it's about re-electing. They have obviously the Democratic Party, which is completely perverted, basically a group of people. So, and you have apparatchiks who only know how to promote their personal interest and careers within the existing system of existing political and administrative system. Period. Look at the backgrounds. They either political scientists like Mr. Sullivan, whose only achievement in life was to be, he has been the manager of Hillary Clinton's election campaign, and he was the guy who invented Russia Gate. Can you imagine? This are the extent of his skills. And same goes for Blinken, same goes, Lord Austin, he is obviously utterly militarily incompetent man. Probably his staff also, they are all psychophants. And when you look at this, the only thing which, for example, Mr. Putin and SVR, obviously, and other intelligence structures and analytical structures, including through general staff, they understand they will sell their soul to a devil only to get reelected, because for them also now, after what they did to the country, especially including Obama administration, many of them, they are facing the possibility of being behind bars, and they committed many crimes, and that is why for them it becomes the existential issue. Because if, God forbid, for them, Mr. Trump wins, Mr. Trump is very spiteful man, as you would expect from any narcissist. And he certainly have a long memory. He would love to see number of people, get a proper trial and then end up behind bars. And we're talking about the highest level. Mr. Trump is the first U.S. president who has been criminally pursued. So he might as well do this to Obama and obviously Biden. I mean, I don't even know how to judge this guy. Just get him into the decent, nursing home and let him, live out his days there. But the point is that we have these dynamics now, and you have the country of the nincompoops. They cannot run anything. They know ideology, for example, pushing, this whole, woke ideology and things of this nature, but that's about it. They cannot do strategy. Militarily, they are amateurs. So, and when you look at this, so how do you approach those people? If you are, for example, in Kremlin or in general staff, you scratch your head and say, okay, let's move kind of, the way we're moving now and see where it all goes, because you don't know when it will come all to a head, in Washington. But what we observe, I never saw anything like this in my life. This is literally, it's circus. I mean, it's beyond comprehension.
You talk about if Trump wins, what's going to happen. The other problem for Europe going to be the Trump administration and how they see Europe, because it's unbelievable.
Trump doesn't see Europe as very much valuable. It doesn't mean that he will, for example, if let's imagine that he wins or he is allowed to win, but then in this case, then we know what's going to happen to the United States. Nothing good. It's going to be, go into the very steep, so to speak, glide towards the disintegration, and God forbid, hot civil war. But when you look at this, Europe is, they always have been a bunch of freeloaders. They always have been. Their standard of living and everything, which at some point of time in 70s and 80s was becoming the kind of envy of the world. I mean, we know what it was based upon. And of course, it was NATO, they loved the United States to be there. That is why I don't buy this garbage when they say, oh yeah, Germany is occupied country. No, Germans enjoyed it. They wanted it. They wanted, those, because they hate Russians, they wanted, defense from Russians. They thought that they would defend them. But now, my gosh, let them wake up now and face the music. So the whole system is just the whole the psychological core of the system, which was built on some kind of the trust relations between the governments, between the United States and France, United States and Germany, where it was looked at as the equal partnership. It is all gone. Everybody now for itself, if United States needs to eat somehow economically, Germany or France, the United States will do. And guess what? If we abstragate from all things moral, ethical, or historical perspective, if I'm an average Joe, I don't care about Paris or, Berlin. I want my piece of bread and stew on the table. I want the gas in my car. And you cannot actually blame people for that. Average Joe got used to live more or less well, So if this wellness has to extend by the means of consuming France, Spain, or Italy, well, so be it. Nobody cares what, if they're going to die from hunger there. Well, the United States may send a couple of the planes with the humanitarian aid. But other than that, when you look at the whole dynamics of these policies, you clearly can see that it's over, guys. The only thing which is left, of course, United States wants the war in Europe because they are one-trick ponies in Washington. They don't know history, and they think that they can repeat Marshall Plan 2.0, go in, enter the destroyed Europe, and then basically, strip it off whatever is there and impose itself there and just milk that market. Obviously, it's not going to work. It's completely different story today. But they don't understand it. Again, that's what happens when you have people without proper education and experiences. There you go.
Andrei, the other problem for the Biden administration and for the United States foreign policy would be the conflict in Gaza. And we've seen that Israelis have attacked Iranian consulate in Syria. They are fighting in Gaza. They are in conflict, in some sort of conflict with Hezbollah, and now they're attacking an Iranian consulate, which is totally against international law in Syria. And in your opinion, what they're seeking by these actions?
Netanyahu seeks avoiding being thrown behind bars. So, because, and for that, he, and not to speak about those nut jobs which constitute part of his government and political parties, some of them are just downright Nazis, Zionist Nazis ready to kill anybody. So, and for that, and for Israel to survive for now, they need larger regional war. And of course, they need to drag the United States, which they already did, actually. So, and that's pretty much it. There's, and of course, they would love to completely eradicate Palestinians, so that's what they do. They lost, actually, operationally there because they withdrew most of the forces. The only thing they know is how to bomb with impunity. That's about it. As the army is what they commit, atrocities they commit. There are so many evidence, so much evidence today what they do, from rape to execution of even children. It's not an army; it's a basically gang, And militarily they are. It's just, I don't want to go there. It's just completely incompetent.
We've seen that Israeli Minister of Justice Ben Gvir was forcing Netanyahu that he has to finish his job in Rafah. He has to attack Rafah. If not, he's not going to be Prime Minister of Israel. That's so amazing because we see somebody more radical even than Netanyahu.
There are some nut jobs there. I mean, complete. The genocidal maniacs, Zionists, so there you go. You have plenty of those here in the United States too.
And in your opinion, we've seen that Netanyahu, it seems to me that Netanyahu sees Rafah as his final chance. And on the other hand, we see that King of Jordan was talking about that if they attack, we know that King of Jordan is totally in line with the Western countries, but he said to Joe Biden that it's the red line, it's the brightest of red lines for Arab states if they attack Rafah. And we know that Joe Biden is suffering from this policy in Gaza as well. Do you think with all this complexity that we're witnessing right now, the United States is giving their green line to Israel to attack Rafah?
Biden administration is absolutely subverted by the Zionists. And when you look attentively at, Mr. Biden himself, just loved to declare himself for decades that I'm a Zionist, So, and when you look at people in Washington and who run the show, I mean, just every other of them, if not like 70% of them, are Zionists. They have probably, they love Israel. They want Israel to succeed. Most of those people have sometimes, if not, they are not outright dual loyalty to Israel. Many of them are from the what is called the Christian Zionist, so-called. There's nothing Christian about that. It's a death cult, basically, but it's a very powerful organization and strata of the American society, which of course keeps in line, this whole pro-Israeli policies of Washington. The only thing which Biden and Obama's behind him, of course, because Obama, it's the third Obama's term, basically. They are afraid of that. Of course, it can damage whatever the chances of the re-election. So, but again, you know what? Rhetoric, they just talk too much. They supply Israel still with the whatever needed ammunition and things of this nature. And you know what? Yeah, United States foreign policy is dead. It doesn't have any. United States is the extension of the Israel. So basically, it's own thug or the guy who stands at the doors of the bar. So there you go, and that's what United States has become.
We've seen that Erdogan is putting some sort of sanctions on Israel. On the other hand, Andrei, we have new polls coming from Israel that show 78% of Israelis are against the Netanyahu administration. And on the other hand, that is shocking, it's 68% are in favor of his policies in Gaza. And it seems to me that they are totally disconnected from the reality of Israel right now. They don't understand that they totally dependent on a country like Turkey, that they're receiving 40% of their oil and gas from Turkey.
Well, per Erdogan, his party obviously got thrashed on the municipal elections, especially in Istanbul. Istanbul is a cosmopolitan city, very, how to say, liberal in many respects, very European also, while obviously having a very specific Oriental, flavor to it. But yeah, he was talking for too long now. And people now begin to ask also within Turkey why we are not doing anything, especially considering the fact that the ideology of, first, Erdogan, he is a Muslim Brotherhood. Okay, let's start with that. And so there are some political issues which are very difficult for him. But yeah, he obviously had to do that. For population of Israel, yeah, they would love the Palestinians, majority of them would love the Palestinians gone, annihilated. So, so it's just the way it is. This is everything everybody needs to know about Israel. Modern Israel, that's what it is. And you know what? Israel is signing itself now the death sentence, because eventually, well, not eventually, it's already happening, as I already stated, that Erdogan, who was only, big guy on his words, he suddenly jumps to action, and really cuts. There is another thing. He cuts a lot of steel for Israel, and you cannot fight war without steel. Not to speak, of course, about oil and jet fuel. So, and there is another very peculiar event which happened 2 days ago. Turkey asked Russia and China to become part of the Russian-Chinese space station and the base on the moon by 2030. So, wow, this is unexpected. Turkey has some degree of the aerospace experience, obviously. So, and like, who knows? Turkey is a thing on its own and it moves completely differently, from any other, for example, European countries. And the fact that Erdogan went there, it demonstrates to you what, basically, they really had the last straw there. As per Israel, no surprise here at all. No surprise here at all.
It seems that if the United States decides to put some sort of sanctions on Turkey in response to what's going on between Turkey and Israel right now, it's going to get even much more complicated in terms of the relationship between Turkey and the United States?
Well, Turkey will begin the moving closer to BRICS, obviously, which is, by the way, yeah, Russia signed another, Rosatom signed another contract for another nuclear power station. So Turkey already is moving towards BRICS. There's a lot of, this fluffy rhetoric. It's Orient, we have to understand it's, it has its own way of doing things. But yeah, Turkey is inexorably is moving towards BRICS. And it's the issue of energy, of course, and energy decides everything. It always did, but now even more so. And obviously, Turkey is really eyeing the military and economic potential of this couple, China and Russia, and it's immense, both in technologies and resources, and militarily, Russia is the most powerful nation militarily now. And I don't think so Russia will repeat again this mistake it did in 1980s, trusting West. So that's not going to happen again. Russia is done with the West. So, and when you look at this, yeah, it's completely insane, unexpected dynamics. And the only reason, again, Arab countries kind of, try to abstain from all that is because, yeah, they are really weak economically. Their main savings and setting of accounts is done in the US dollars. So yeah, United States can indeed really easily dispose of the governments there if it decides to do so. But again, so who knows? We'll see.
Just to wrap up this session, I think this case of Turkey is so important for NATO, for the future of NATO, because we know that the second largest army in NATO is Turkey, and it's much more important than the United Kingdom, Germany, all of these countries.
Yeah, it is. It's the real standing army, which is, you literally can say, oh, okay, we have so many brigades, we have so many, the corps, one corps, second corps, and things of this nature. Obviously, yeah, Turkey in this respect, and it's the largest indeed army, and now it is also armed with Russian weapons, and they're probably going to get more, and that will hurt United States pretty badly. Actually, they started moving the S-400 into other places. I didn't really catch it today because I have to process so much of information but it was like, yeah, that's Turkey, all right, that's how they move.